Today, we're going to talk about using the Adobe Lightroom Remove tools to help remove distractions from your landscape photos. So over the years, Adobe's really improved the remove tools in Lightroom. I've found it's become more powerful, easier to use, and just better at doing its job. Several years ago, anytime I needed to do any kind of remove or clone that was even a little bit remotely more than simple, I would bounce it out into Photoshop, and that's where I'd do it. The heal and the clone tools in Photoshop are always much better, and it's one of the big things I actually used Photoshop for. Was if I'm trying to remove distractions or anything like that, I would bounce over to it. But again, within the past couple of years, Adobe really seems to have put some effort into those tools, and even heal and clone I think have gotten better, and now it's got a remove tool that can use generative AI, and it's starting to become pretty smart. In fact, we're going to talk about one of the very new features they just added that seems to work surprisingly well. But with that said, as these tools have become more powerful, it's just become much easier to remove distractions from your photos. For a lot of people, it was intimidating to do these removals because you would have to go into Photoshop and it seemed complex, but Lightroom's made it a lot easier. Now, for my landscape photography, I really do everything I can to try to minimize me being at locations that are crowded. I don't like people in my photos, and I don't like to do removes if I can help it. So I time my trips for very early morning or late in the evenings and try to dodge the crowds whenever possible. But if you've traveled somewhere and maybe you're trying to check off a few different places, and it may become inevitable that you're going to go to a location where you can photograph it, but there's just going to be people in your scene. Maybe it's a really popular area, and by the time you get there, the light's still okay, but the other people coming to see the scene have started to wander through, and they just get in your shot, and they're there. Well, Lightroom's made it very easy to remove those people. In fact, at some of my workshops where we happen to visit some of the locations when there's more people around than we might normally like, I sort of tell people, go ahead and take the photo because Lightroom's made it really easy to clean this up, so don't worry about it, don't stress about it. But I would say that, but I'd never done a video on really using the remove tool to demonstrate just how easy it is. So that's sort of what this video is for these removals of people from scenes in your photo for those times you just can't photograph them when they're just you in the scene. So with that, let's take a look at Lightroom, and we're going to talk a little bit about my sample image that I've got here, and we'll talk a little bit about those remove tools. So for this video, I'm going to focus on the remove mode, which is the one I use most often with one exception, which we'll talk about. But Adobe Lightroom has a remove tool, and it has three modes. It has a remove mode, a heal mode, and a clone mode. And just in case you're not familiar with this and this is all new to you, I am going to touch on the heal mode and the clone mode just to sort of show you what they do and how they work, and which times I actually do tend to use the heal mode. Then we'll dive into the remove tool and just talk about how powerful it is with this image I've got pulled up right here. Okay, so what I've got pulled up here is this is an image of Ash Cave down in Hocking Hills, and I photograph here quite a bit, and it actually can be a very difficult place to photograph because when it gets crowded, there's all of these people around. Now in this particular image, this one's not super complex. There were people in the frame, they would pass through, and it was hard to time everything to get it just right. So we've got these people here, which we're gonna use the various remove tools to take care of them. And beyond these people here, there's a couple other little objects we're gonna play with. We've got this sign over here that's not great. And then we've got this little sign here that you can barely see, but I know it's there, so I like to sort of remove it. And then while I don't normally remove this staircase back here, I think it makes for an interesting example of something just slightly more complex to sort of demonstrate the power of the remove tools in Lightroom. So when we're looking at this image, we're going to play with removing these people, removing these two signs, and removing this staircase there in the background, though I might not normally remove that staircase. So with that said, here we are in Adobe Lightroom. I've got a couple different copies of this image pulled up in case I want to flip between, but I've done some light edits on it. This isn't a final edit image or anything like that, but I got it cleaned up a little bit, and this is what we're going to work with to go through it. So we're here in the develop module. You know, we got our cropping tools and our masking tools and everything up here at the top. We're going to go to the remove tool, which is this little eraser looking icon up here. And we're going to come into here, and we've got sort of three modes. We've got clone, which has been around for a long time. We've got heal, which is here. And then we've got the remove option, which is where we get some of the more advanced features of Adobe Lightroom. So let's start with the clone tool first. And essentially the clone tool just duplicates another part of the picture into another part of the picture. So if we come down here to this sign, let's zoom in to 100%. So as you can see down here in the lower right hand corner, we've got this sign that I want to remove. I'm on the clone tool, which looks like this stamp. We'll leave things pretty much default. I can change the size here and change the feather, which we'll look at in a minute. But if I take this and just swipe over that sign, as you can see, it's taken a copy of this section on the left and put it over here on the right. And it can work for some situations. I still find it somewhat clunky in Lightroom to use, but sometimes it's the right tool to use, especially if it's a little small spot. Like if we had a little small rock here on the sand, it would be pretty easy to remove with the clone tool. You can play with the feather options. Let's turn the outline off, but if we turn the feather way up, as you can see, you can almost get it so the sign comes back. If you turn feather down to 0, you can actually see the hard edges of the clone. Like I said, I don't use this tool a whole lot. I've done some pretty extensive cloning in Photoshop where I think the tool is a little friendlier to use. But with some of the advancements in Lightroom, a lot of times I don't even find it necessary to bounce over into Photoshop to do that. So I don't use the clone tool a whole lot. So let's cancel out of those changes. So I'm just going to Control Z those changes, take me back to my original image. But that's the clone tool. Let's move over to the heal tool. So what the heal tool is, it sort of takes the texture, the color, the tone, and sort of samples it over what you're trying to remove. So here we've got the heal tool. If I come down, swipe out the same sign, and it does okay, but it doesn't really pass close examination. So like if we come in here, you can see it's a little fuzzy over here. So it's just not the greatest way to remove it. It wouldn't print well, wouldn't show up anything like that. Now you can change where it samples from. So let's bring the tool back. I can change it, so I can move it over here. Let's go back to 100%. So I can move it wherever. So if you come down in here in the sand, it starts making that type of sampling, it just doesn't fit for the scene. It can work, but again, with some of the more advanced tools in Adobe Lightroom, it's just not the greatest tool. It's not the first one I go to anymore. Now, where I do still use the heal tool is, many of you have heard me complain about the sensor spots on Nikon cameras, no sensor shield, it's easy to get dust. Well, sometimes you'll take a picture and if you've got a big sky, you'll see that sensor dust in your image. And the heal tool can work great for that. You can just get a small little sample. If it's up there in the sky, it'll sample from someplace right over next to the sensor dust, and it cleans it up pretty nicely. So I do still use the heal tool to clean up a lot of that sensor dust. I've talked about the whole visualize spots tool and how to do that in Lightroom. I'll link to that video down in the description below if you want to see more on how to use Adobe Lightroom to remove sensor dust from your images. But that's really down to about the only time I really use the heal tool these days. So that's a quick look at the Adobe Lightroom clone tool and the heal tool. Like I said, I've never really used them a whole lot in Lightroom. When it was really the only options, I would take it into Photoshop. And I just always felt that the heal and the clone tool there were much improved, and that would be the one I would use. However, with the advent of the remove tool in Lightroom, this one has gotten much better. Now you can choose to use it with generative AI or not with generative AI. Let's bounce over this one that we haven't touched yet. So the sign's back. Let's go take a look at that corner again. And I am going to just use the remove tool. It looks like the eraser. Again, you can adjust your size either by the slider or these brackets. I'm just going to swipe over the sign just like I have been. Do not have the generative AI on. We're just going to let Adobe analyze it. It's very similar to the heal tool, right? It just doesn't do a great job. It's a little muddy, it's a little fuzzy, and not great. But this is where Adobe really steps it up. If we come in here and just reverse those changes, check off use generative AI, this is where we're going to start to take advantage of some of Adobe's AI intelligence to do this removal. And if I come in here and swipe that sign, once I highlight it, now it says, do I want to add more areas? Do I want to subtract an area or anything like that? I'm pretty happy with the selection. It's not a big deal. So I'm going to click remove, and it's going to go out and it's going to use Adobe's cloud to do this, and take a look at that. That cleans it up quite nicely. I don't get the blurriness. I don't get the fuzziness right there, which is pretty great. Now, another cool thing with the remove tool is you get variations. It generated 3 versions of this. So I can cycle through. I actually like the second version a little better. Go to the third version. Yeah, third version is not bad. It's clean. It's better than what the remove tool did by itself. It's better than the heal tool and the clone tool. But I feel like I sort of like that second version the best. And if you don't like either of those options, you can generate again, and it'll go back out and generate another set of options for you to choose. So here I am again, go through one. That one's pretty good. That one's not bad either. So just a super powerful tool to use it with the generative AI turned on. And there's a lot of debate about artificial intelligence. Is it good? Is it bad? We can talk more about that in a future video. But for my purposes, to do these quick removals and things like that, generative AI just makes my life as a landscape photographer much easier. Now, what you remove from a scene, that's really up to you. I mean, I try to do my best to capture a scene the way I see it, and I'm not planning to do a ton of removals, but sometimes it's just super nice to have that option. So let's do this at scale. I'm going to leave generative AI on. Let's zip out to 100% because like I said, we had a whole bunch of these people in here, right? So let's hit 100%. Let's scroll over here. So I got these people down at the base of the waterfall, right? So I'm going to resize this. Again, I'm using the remove tool with generative AI on. I'm just going to swipe over that kid. They're blurry because I was using a longer exposure. I like that selection. Click remove. Let Adobe do its thing. Nice and clean. Over here, actually, let's start with this simpler one. So we got these trio of people right here. So we're going to just swipe. Make sure I get them all covered. I'm actually going to add a little bit because I feel like I might have missed on their feet a little bit there. Give a little bit more. I'd like to give a little bit of room around there. I'm going to say remove. It's going to go back out. Let's zoom into 200%. And look at that. That is just a very clean remove. It just worked really well. Let's stay here at 200%. There's this kid down here. Let's get them out of there. I'm just going to remove. I like the selection. But as you can see, this is just so much easier than the clone and the heal tool to remove things. Now this one's a little odd. It put this, what looks like a bird down there. And like I said, it is going out and using generative AI. It's trying to figure out what to go. And for some reason, it dumped that bird. Not real sure why, but I can cycle through. Option 2 is better. Option 3 is better. So option 1 on this one's a bit wacky. Option 2 works just fine. So we'll leave that. Let's go back out to 100%. I've got this person up here. Let's just swipe over them. Do a remove. Clean that up. And then we got this person underneath the waterfall with their dog. Let's just swipe them like that. Let's do a remove. And ta-da, let's take a look at the whole image. Got all the people out of there, and it was nice, simple, and easy to do. Like I said, Lightroom's just come such a long way. Normally, this would have been something that would have been a little more painstaking. Photoshop would have made it a little easier, but there was a day this used to take a lot of time to clean up and remove, and I probably wouldn't even have taken that photograph. But in this particular case, I knew Lightroom made it so easy that it would not be that hard to come in and clean it up and remove those temporary objects from it. Over here, we got this little sign. Let's zoom into 200%. There's this little sign. It sits right here. We'll just swipe over it, remove. Clean that right up. So again, if you ever find yourself in a location that you just cannot time it without people in it, the remove tools in Lightroom just make it so easy to clean things up these days. So let's do another example. We're going to start over. We're going to, like I said, I created virtual copies of all these. Let's come over here. Lightroom just did a new update semi-recently where they added an option called distraction removal. One of them is reflections, which we're not going to talk about today, though it's pretty cool if you've seen any of the demos out there. But this came up just as I was preparing and planning for this video, and it's pretty cool. It's called people. So if I expand it, Lightroom is going to go and detect the people in this particular scene and automatically select them. So it's not getting my sign because it's not a person, not getting my sign, it's not getting the staircase, but it got the people. Now, let's take a quick look. It's not perfect yet. It got most of the people. It got these people here, got this kid, got this person, but it left part of the dog over here, and it didn't get this person, though admittedly that's a pretty blurry person, sort of hard to tell, because again, this was a long exposure trying to get the waterfall, so that kid was moving and got that. So first, this up here is not a person. So I can click on that, click delete, and I can remove that, so I can easily deselect it. Now, I wish that I could come in here and expand this to get it over the dog, but I can't. So hopefully someday in a future update, it'll maybe let us do that, add to one of these selections. But for now, let's go with this. I'm just going to say remove. And ta-da, there is a scene with those people removed. Now, say I don't like how it generated. For example, I'm not sure that rock is supposed to be there. So we're going to select that particular spot, this one single remove spot, and I get my variation option back again. I can go through, and there. See, that rock seemed odd to me. I don't recall there being a rock there. My option 2 shows just the water coming down through the scene and sitting there. And then there's this option, which I sort of like better because this one, the water gets just a little funky down here. See how it gets more white when it's been faded? So this third option looks a little more like what I would expect it to do. Let's go back to fit. So I've done that. So that sped up my workflow right there, right? If I had a lot of people in this scene, it would probably get a good number of the people. I can easily come back in here, go back up to my normal remove right up here, and I can just swipe over the kid, say remove. So once I use the people detection, I can go remove other things. Makes it nice and easy. We can get rid of the sign, remove that sign, change my remove tool right there, remove that sign, remove. Cool. And as you can see, I was able to remove all those people, remove those signs and all of that. And it just doesn't take that long. Okay, finally, I said we'd do something just a little more complicated. Let's get up here to this staircase. We're going to use Generative AI to remove this. We're going to come in here. We're going to make my selection a little bigger. I'm not going to worry too much about these stairs. I just want this wooden staircase to go away. So I'm just going to swipe over it. Make sure I've got it. I like my selection. I think it looks good. We're going to say remove. We'll cycle through my options. I get 3 options. That one looks a little not great. That does something weird with the stairs. It's not terrible, but I think I like my first one the best. And we've got an option. If I want to try something else, I can generate again. So if I wasn't happy with any one of those 3 options. Again, I feel like that staircase was just a slightly more complicated remove. That's not a bad option right there. That's not too bad of an option right there, but it gives you choices. And if you're not happy with the first set it gives you, you can just regenerate. So again, remove tool did a really good job there. So let's look at the before picture here. We'll look at the before. As you can see, got the sign, got the people. And when what was a relatively quick time, would it be even faster if I wasn't explaining each step along the way? I was able to clean that image up and it looks like no one was there. So that's how simple Adobe Lightroom makes it to remove things from your photos that are distractions. Now, like I said, I try to be super patient and try to get my scenes without people in them, but sometimes it's just really hard to do that due to the particular time you can be there, or maybe it got busier sooner than you thought and you traveled a fair distance and you still want that picture. Well, Adobe Lightroom makes it easy to sort of remove those distractions later on. Like I said, I talk about this in my workshops a lot, especially the one that I run down here in Hocking Hills, where by the time we get to early afternoon, we still have more photography and camera stuff to work on, but it gets harder and harder to get the perfect scene without a person in it. It's not always a ton of people or anything like that, but it's super easy to remove those people. You can go ahead and take the photo and come back and within a couple minutes clean it up in Lightroom. Now, where the line is as to what you remove and what you don't remove is really up to you. Like I said, that sign I think is distracting. Yes, it's there, but it's a man-made object. The one sign, the bigger one over there on the right-hand side of the image that we saw, that's a new sign. It hasn't always been there. That's one the park put up, and it's sort of annoying because it sits right there. The sign across the way that says it's a restoration area. Do not go up. Do not hike on. That's been there for quite a while, and I've just learned to sort of remove it. And those people that are in the scene, again, they're transient, they're temporary objects. They aren't normally there. And if that was the only time of day I could get to this waterfall when there's people there, Lightroom gives you those tools to clean it up. So anyways, I hope you found this video helpful. Hopefully it helps you if you ever find yourself at a busier spot and sort of frustrated that there's people constantly in your scene. Lightroom gives you some tools to quickly and easily remove them. Anyways, I'll link to a couple other Adobe Lightroom videos you might find handy up here. I hope you check them out and hope it helps you with your landscape photography. Thanks for watching.